When people left MySpace, nobody got together and was like, we're all going to go to Facebook.
No, that never happened.
It just happened.
Just all of a sudden, it just starts spilling. So it's like, I mean, they could always make that wrong step, and it could happen. But my point is, open, like you said, decentralization of bringing as many minds as is feasible or efficient together to make decisions, I think is always the best bet. Or maybe not always, but tends to be the best bet. Whereas I know that a lot of people of power would disagree with that sentiment, but
they're scared to show us the algorithm for a reason.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and the internet, to another episode of Three Averagely Intelligent Dudes. And we're here today. We're discussing a dangerous idea. One of the most dangerous ideas to speak about because it's going to restrict our speech if we don't have our free speech.
Yes. Today we're talking a little bit about Elon Musk and his bidding war with Twitter, how that's going for him, what the implications could be if he were to succeed in purchasing Twitter or not. Right. Just the whole conversation, like you said, around free speech and what should or should not be allowed to be said on said Twitter.
Yeah, I like this one because we disagree a lot, but we also agree a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting conversation because of the fact that it's like a meta conversation. It's a conversation about how we're going to frame the social conversation, which is, it's important because, you know me, like I'm a stickler for framing and like language use because you have to set it up right. The rules of the game have to be set up properly for everybody to be able to like play well. So.
I agree.
Yeah, let's get right into it.
Yep.
But
I'm down for an Elon Musk episode today, though.
Yeah. Because I mean, today I think is a very much free speech conversation as much as it is Elon a supervillain or not conversation.
I like that angle.
Yeah. I mean, that's the angle that most people are presenting. I would like to expand the conversation a little bit today, and the idea of like, Elon, he's a billionaire. He's like a world billionaire. He's pulling strings.
I'm sure we'll hit a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I also, like they're making some headway on the Neuralink thing.
Right.
And I mean, I feel like you can't talk about Elon Musk without talking about Neuralink. I mean, like the man wants to put microchips in people's brains.
You got to be skeptical of that.
Even if everybody's like, oh, he bought Twitter. I'm like, yeah, but you think Twitter will come pre-downloaded on the Neuralink chips? You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I do.
Like, I can see how a lot of that plays it.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, the big topic of discussion is Elon put in, or he hasn't even actually put in a bid. He's discussed putting in a bid to buy Twitter. He has made like an open offer to it. I have an article here that kind of
$43 billion.
Yeah, I have an article here that does the old everything you need to know.
I'll pay you $43 billion in cash if you just give me your company.
And that's what a lot of people were saying too about how like they don't know if he's really serious because Elon be saying some wild shit sometimes, and like
that's true.
He also be doing some wild shit sometimes.
He does.
That's also true.
But like you said, for somebody to just be like, I got 43 bill on it. You won't do it. You know what I mean?
Well, we say somebody, but literally the richest man in the world.
No, I feel that. But still,
I mean, if anybody's got
really thought out from a business standpoint what it would mean to put up $43 billion to buy this company and if it's really worth it and all that, like how much has he actually thought this through as like an actual legitimate business plan, or is this just like swinging your big dick around?
This is the most comical. This is my favorite, most comical angle is. He doesn't care. He's just doing it because he can't. Like when you are the richest person in the world, nothing is outside of your reach.
That's right.
You can buy Twitter. You could just
buy Twitter.
You could just
like,
make your own car company.
Fuck it.
You could just and you can do that as a regular millionaire or billionaire. But he's the biggest millionaire billionaire.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like he's top dog.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's not even like that. Like, side tangent. The Chelsea bids, like there's like 3 consortiums now that are like up for this Chelsea bid, but like it's a very vast group. Each bidder is like a very vast group of like parent companies and individuals, and like sometimes there's like 2 or 3 billionaires per person because nobody can just like afford to just come out and buy the whole club. But Elon Musk could.
Elon Musk could.
Elon Musk could.
Level,
he could easily, with the amount that he's talking about buying Twitter for, he could buy like 11 Chelseas.
You can buy the entire
Easily.
English Premier
He
League.
could just come and pay cash on that bitch. He
Play
could just buy the entire Premier League. He'd be like, Elon Musk is sponsoring the Premier League now.
the
Fuck
Tesla
Barclays.
Barclays Premier League.
Yeah, like it's just,
So let's clarify something real quick. I know we might be throwing around as a euphemism, but he's not buying it out cash, first of all. And like Elon doesn't have $43 billion just sitting around, right? Like all of his money, like a majority of his net worth is tied up in Tesla stock, right? So he would have to sell majority stocks of Tesla. So what I saw was he's been partnering with Morgan Stanley. I guess the way that, this is big business shit, so it's hard for me to wrap my head around all the entities and how it works. But from what I heard, it's like he's partnering with Morgan Stanley to kind of broker the deal.
Right.
Because when you're talking about acquiring something at like a $43 billion price tag, you usually involve the banks in some way. And so the bank...
Right.
bank rolls it for you, and you in debt to the bank essentially. So you take it on as debt. So he
basically,
would be buying
it's like
a lot
at
of
a
credit.
casino, but like only, like if you go to a casino and you want to make like a really big buy-in or something like that, like it has to be approved. It's kind of the same thing, but it's like with the government being the person that approves it. Like you have to go through the bank so that the government can be like, what's going on here? Like really banks are only the people allowed to be like, I'm going to spend $43 billion right now on
No, he
one
just doesn't
transaction.
have it. He just doesn't, like, he has to do it on credit essentially.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like even if he had like even cash, like when they say cash, they just mean like I'm going to purchase this myself without financing it. Like I don't even think that you could do that. Like because Howard, like the bank would still have to facilitate the transfer of that money.
That's
somehow.
the SEC.
Which he's been scraping against a couple times.
Yeah. Dude, every time he makes a move, he has to file it with the SEC. Even when he's like stating intention, like I've read a lot of stuff about this and him just being like, he filed with the SEC saying, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm about to do. So that's the way the government keeps track of like what's going on with this. The bank's involvement is specifically for credit. Like I said, like if he wanted to buy it, he's not coming with cash. He's gonna be like, my boys Morgan Stanley, they already said they'll buy this from me for $43 billion and I'll pay them back later type thing. And so he brought them on. And what's interesting is I'll open right here with, so Twitter's fighting back, right? Because this is actually like a hostile takeover, right? Like it's not like Twitter wants to sell or anything.
Right.
Elon's just like, I will flex on y'all and I will buy you up at a rate that you can't.
Hasn't he already bought, or he's like talking about buying, like you think he just needs to buy 9% to have
He
a
owns
majority.
9%.
Yeah, he's got 9%,
And he
but
is the
isn't that the
majority
majority
stakeholder.
stockholder?
Mhm.
Yeah. So now, he's just, I mean, I guess he could theoretically just buy enough shares to do that.
Okay, so let me put you in what they're doing. They're doing what's called a poison pill on him. This is the technique in which Twitter has adopted to break, like to combat against Elon Musk. And so, what the poison pill is, it consists of a new shareholders' rights plan to give certain shareholders the right to purchase more stock if Musk or another buyer attempts to seize control. And it signals that Twitter's board intends to fight Musk's bid to take sole ownership of the company. Musk immediately set about soliciting suggestions about ways to improve Twitter by what else? Tweeting a poll. The company responded by offering him a board seat, a move that would have restricted him to owning just 15% of the company. At first he said yes, then he changed his mind and said no, and they've been kind of going back and forth. Watch some other stuff about it, but essentially this poison pill is like that. As he tries to buy up stocks, more and more stocks, they start offering stocks to other people at a cheaper price. So the more you own, the more it's like premium you have to buy it at, and other people get to buy them at cheaper. So they create competition against you to buy up this stock. So now he's at 9%. He was going well into but that's why they were like, well, we'll make you a board of directors. This is them trying to, again, be like, no, please don't take us over. And he was about to be like, yeah, I'll work with you guys. But then he got around them.
And then his lawyer was like, nah.
He got around them and was like, these motherfuckers don't know what they're talking about. Like, he just was like, he tried to get invited to board of directors. And he was like, there's an SEC filing that says he's like, I do not have faith in the management of this. After declining a seat on Twitter's board, Musk updated his filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission to indicate that he would not be a passive player in the company's affairs. Gone was the language that he would restrict his holdings to just 14% of the company. In retrospect, this was the first clue that he may attempt something more impactful than just buying some stock and serving as a board member. But he was just like, he's just not getting along with the CEO and the other guy. Like, he doesn't like their vision. And if you become a part of the board, like I said, that comes with certain level of restrictions.
Yeah,
you can't own a majority stake. Like you can only own 15%. And so so he was like, nah, fuck that. I'll just buy it outright. But like I said, now they're making it harder and harder since he denied that and said, I'll buy you guys up. They're making it harder and harder for him to buy. And so his little maneuver to circumvent that was to bring other investors in, to bring a consortium along.
He said, listen, I got Joe Rogan.
Right. Yeah. That ass.
He's like, I got PewDiePie.
Lex Friedman. We're all going to buy this.
We're coming in. It's going to be the creator, YouTuber.
He was actually picking somebody who is a partner on Twitter right now, I guess, is like a board of directors. You know, it's working, dude. He's working them. So they're fighting about it, but he's at 9% right now, and he's, increasing his stakeholds, putting more pressure on them, because I don't know what the requirement is of like how high he needs to get to become the sole owner of it. But I
just buy 51 just in case.
Yeah,
I just buy 51% just in case.
If I'm the richest man in the world, I do whatever it takes to get whatever the fail-safe is.
Right. But the interesting thing about this, and where I think the conversation starts, is it's not a money play. He's been wide open on the idea that he wants to buy it for the sake of the good of the people. And some of the reasoning that he has behind it, I'm like, go, Elon, go. I mean, first of all, one thing he wants to do is he wants to open source the algorithm.
Free the algorithm.
Yes. That is the most genius thing I have ever heard coming out of a social media platform ever.
That's pretty insane.
It's ever.
Yeah, but he doesn't want to source the code, though.
Huh?
He doesn't want to source the whole code, though.
He does.
I've seen a lot of stuff saying that he wants to source the algorithm, but nobody's ever said anything about him sourcing the actual code of Twitter, which is what like other places, like legit open source places, like the code is there and you could take it, you could do shit with it.
I mean, yeah,
that's it's not fucked.
All that would let you do is like build your own Facebook, like
yeah,
you know what I mean, like you could build your own Twitter platform.
That's what everybody
But you
wants.
could already do that, like the algorithm
It'd be just
is
like MySpace.
the sauce, But I love this, because dude, I was just talking to my poor mom the other day, and she got pigeonholed in her TikTok. She was like, her TikTok went increasingly violent and increasingly like negative, and she was like, I don't understand how I ended up now where it's just like fight videos and drama between other TikTokers, and she's like, I don't care about this shit. Like I miss the fun puppy videos I used to have. So she even went on a Google search to try and correct her algorithm.
Wow.
And everybody was like, you got to start a new account. You fucked up. You like the wrong things. Now you're stuck. You're stuck in hate TikTok. And if you want a new TikTok, you got to start all over.
Yeah.
That's wild. You should know how, like, what you're doing to manufacture your algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, that's crazy because like, imagine if you fight all day on Twitter. Imagine if your Twitter is all politics and fighting.
Right.
And then it becomes the de facto town square.
Yeah.
And it's like, because I mean, if Elon, let's say he took it over and like open source or something like that, do you think Twitter would become more popular or less popular? Like, I think it would be more popular because of the increasing level of free speech I would assume would happen if he was in control, which is kind of what he said he would do.
Yeah.
So I think it would really become the de facto town square. I think it would kind of overtake that social media space as the biggest, most populous one where people talk the most, because Facebook has got its niche, so does Instagram, and right now Twitter has its niche, but
I don't see it. Like, I think that there would definitely be like a very big like rush and all the excitement and everything, but I think in 10 years time, it'll probably be mostly the same people that are on it now, or people that were already inclined to be on it if it was like it is now. Because, I mean, who's on Twitter? Like, you might be bringing back some people who left Twitter because they felt like it was treating them unfairly, which isn't, like, a huge portion of people who are on Twitter.
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
that's one person, though. That's what I'm saying. Like,
but it keeps it, like, that ball keeps rolling, I think, if Elon's in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, do you think that people who were otherwise not interested in getting on a social media platform would be somehow incentivized to adopt Twitter because he did this?
If all of their heroes are on Twitter, then maybe more.
Well,
so.
somebody whose heroes are, because this is what I'm saying, like anybody who's young and not on Twitter, like I just imagine like there's a few categories of people that would be to make the bulk of them, which would be like people who feel like Twitter's not fucking with the type of shit that they fuck with, or people who are not interested in being on Twitter at all, who are also probably not on a lot of other social medias.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like it would be a big major boost in like the popularity of the platform itself.
I will say
it'd be an improvement.
I will say
eyes.
it depends on how the other platforms
Respond?
continue down that path.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
If they continue to get more and more restrictive, then I see Twitter as being that safe haven that everybody comes
Everybody
to
will
be
flock
able to
to.
like, I can say what the fuck I want to on Twitter. Like I'm tired of getting banned.
That
you
would
know?
totally be the complete death nail of all of these like up and coming like alternatives. Like if one of them just reverted back to like, we're just gonna be open and free and like as long as you don't break the law, you're good. You know, all those people that were like on Rumble or whatever the
Yeah.
alternative Twitter was, you know, like the racists and the Nazi people would probably filter back in.
This is even bigger than.
Oh, they're coming back.
This is even
sure.
bigger than that. This is even bigger than that because if something like YouTube, which is your de facto video uploading platform, is now you have Twitter and you can do that on Twitter, and Twitter's is less like no censored or less censored or something, and now you can, let's say, do similar monetizations but through Twitter, and you could have these certain conversations. Now you're talking about like if Elon gets a hold of Twitter and that becomes a reality, like that's not crazy to me.
No,
it's not
I mean,
crazy
I'm not
to
saying.
yeah, it's like not out of the realm of possibility.
These are
It might be
interesting
a little
things. These are hypotheticals that I didn't take into account.
yeah, which is why I'm like, this is the big free speech conversation we've been waiting to have.
Yeah, 100%.
Facts.
He's some of the other things that he's proposed, because I don't know if he's going to make it the Wild Wild West necessarily, but he did want to see an open source algorithm. He'd like to see an edit feature, so when you make comments and stuff like that on there, you can go back and edit them. He said less moderation and a higher bar for removing offending tweets. And so he said, like, for him, he wants to err on the side of keep it. Like, if there's even a question of whether or not this should stay or go, then it should stay. And he wants that to be more of like, because he does feel like there is an attack on free speech from the woke population, and he wants to temper that. He said, the way I measure free speech is, he's like, can somebody you don't like say something you don't like? Like, is that allowed to happen? And he thinks that more and more in our society today that isn't allowed to happen. You know?
I wonder why he didn't just go with the traditional, if you don't say something against the law, it's good to go route. Like that's like the free speech, like there's an absolutist free speech type of argument, which is like, you could even say that there's a fire in a crowded theater or something, because like a rational human being would look around and say, I don't see any evidence of a fire. This man must be an asshole. But which I kind of understand that argument, but I also understand why the Supreme Court made their decision that they did. But I also think that, like there's already laws against some stuff like that, which is why I don't like get the idea of like this persecution of like ideas. Like racist people can sometimes commit heinous acts against black people or other minorities, but non-racist people could commit heinous acts against random people from the population as well. So it's like, we already have laws against committing heinous violent acts against people. Why are we like stepping into the idea of like policing people's thought and their speech and stuff like that?
I agree to an extent, but when there's anonymity involved in the virtual town square, it starts to get hazy. Because if you have like a targeted campaign or like, okay, think about the law from the sense of the law. There's, what was that girl? She went to jail for a little while because she was sending like the texts like kill yourself.
Yeah, I just watched that the other day.
Okay,
dude,
so it's a real thing where this
Yeah.
woman was like attacking someone through text messaging and like calling or whatever.
Let me.
Yeah, please give me the details.
So there was this woman who convinced she had a boyfriend, and the boyfriend was showing suicidal tendencies, and she like egged him on. Essentially, her whole conversations were like, "Well, when are you gonna do it?" And he's like, "I'm thinking about it." She's like, "Well, you need to do it now. Like, you need to quit waiting. Like, what are you waiting for? And just being like you can do this. Like, do it tomorrow. Like." Pressuring him in a way to kill himself, and so she got put on trial. I don't know what actually happened with the trial. I just watching Jessica watch this the other day, but she was on trial for whether this was like manslaughter or not.
There's a repercussion involved, like,
right?
At least like someone is trying to bring some punishment about through the laws, and when there's anonymity on the internet, someone could do something as heinous or more heinous than that and truly attack someone with vitriol, and it's like. Well, freedom of speech, like,
but there's
the absolutist
other recourses.
Yeah, like
I mean, in a text message, you could easily just block a number. Now, I mean, I don't know anything about this trial, so I'm not saying like he didn't try to block the number and then she just kept, getting on him or whatever. But there's other recourses that you have along the line. Like if somebody's really bothering you on the internet, like I don't think Elon Musk talked about getting rid of the block. Like you still block somebody.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like because I used to have this. I remember when I was younger, I used to think about like online bullying is like it's not really like you can just like tune it out type thing. But if we look at the suicide in young teen girls, correlations with bullying and things like that, like it's having a real effect on a real number of people. That bullying online has a real like a death toll
For sure.
And we have laws against that kind of harassment and bullying in the real world. Like you can't do that. You will, like this woman did with that text messaging, like that's kind of crossing the bridge in the gap. But that if she was harassing and stalking that man, then she could also face legal recourse.
Dude was killing himself by doing the old carbon monoxide into the truck thing. He was gonna get out the truck. Like he was like even getting out and like walking away. He's like, I don't want to do. She's like, you better get back in there. And he was like, all right, hop back in, kill himself. It's crazy. Like that's where it really got like tricky, where they were like, even as he was trying, he was like, I don't think I want to. And she's like, you want to get back in there. And he was just like, I was just like, yo, this is some of the most fuck shit I ever seen.
That's fucked up. Like I'm not trying to like
conversation on like we talk about like where. Because obviously he is complicit in this. Like, I'm not knocking him either. He could be like, bitch, you crazy. Click, Yep. But here's somebody who's also in his...
I mean, he's not mentally stable.
Right,
clearly.
And she's like
she's
the
not
only
either,
person
really.
that he felt love and connection towards this person, And she was manipulated for her own weird, who knows why.
Okay, let me pose it to you this way then. Because I just watched an interesting little like short video on YouTube that Reason put out, and it was about how... it was a clip from a podcast where they were talking to a guy who just put out a book, and it's all about free speech. And he was talking about how the anonymity online is also a protection for people who would otherwise be attacked by other people. And they then have a voice to voice their grievances or their concerns where, if their identity were to be exposed, they couldn't say something like that. And so like, I would just pose the question to you, like, do you think giving up that protection is worth removing the protection that somebody who wanted to commit a hateful act gets with that online anonymity as well? It's like a shield for anybody that wants to step behind it in a sense.
Mm-hmm. And that's cool. I never thought of it in that sense too. Like you said, it is a shield that could be used for bad or negative, but it could be used for positive too, because sometimes there are things that you want to be. We talk about what's his name with the Trump conspiracy. QAnon. Yeah, right? Like okay. QAnon. And what was the guy's name?
Steve Bannon? Or
no, I had the page and everything, and he was putting out little cryptic messages, and we analyzed it here on the podcast.
Yeah, Q.
Okay, so yeah, Q, right? Like that anonymity, like anonymousness gave him the ability to it gave him the ability to like express those ideas.
That's true. Like if it wasn't for the anonymousness of that forum, he was because he used multiple forums, but if it wasn't for that, he could not have garnered that kind of following, whether it was true or not. Obviously it's who freaking knows, bro. Like but you're right, without that there's no cryptic messages, there's no
big daddy government could just come kick your door down and be like, get him, you know what I mean? Like, so I do like a little bit of that. My thing is where I get to this whole thing, the line for me becomes, Twitter is an opinion place, right? But it's also kind of like a news source. Like it's also where you find out what's going on sometimes.
That's true.
Like it's the breaking news. If I want to know who won the fight, the first place I'm going to find that out is Twitter, before the news puts it out at 10, before the YouTube videos get uploaded, it's like Twitter. Everybody's going to take to Twitter. Oh my God, did you see? That's the part that fucks me up about free speech is what if there's like coordinated efforts to put out false information to persuade the population to take certain types of action, and we don't have any recourse against that, even if we all know that it's fake. I do believe that people should do their own due diligence, but I also, we've talked about this in plenty of episodes, think that there's a level to that where there's only so much due diligence one person can put in, and I think it could that's the part that it gets a little tricky to me. It's like
you want a Bernays-free Twitter,
right?
But
well, that's never gonna. Well, because this is the interesting thing about these platforms is that everything that's on these platforms is user generated.
Yes.
Twitter doesn't make anything.
Right.
They might control what some people see based on the algorithm or whatever, but they're only got what's to work with what everybody else is putting up on there. And so that's what's interesting about it, is that it's like, because, it's not like coordinated attempts to misinform the populace hasn't happened before these platforms or before digitization. I mean, you just get a bunch of people together to falsify the official church records that's posted on the bulletin board in the town square. Bob's your uncle, you know what I mean?
You could chisel a lie in stone.
In stone, yeah. I mean, so it's like like that rock we were talking about.
Right. I lifted this rock over my head, you fucking
says the stone carver from 3,000 years ago. Maybe not, like we don't even know. Maybe the stone's that old, but who's to say the carvings are that old? And it's like, I made this point in an earlier episode not too long ago, but just because the information is so diffused now, there's no authority to it, but you're privy to more information than you may well have gotten before. It's just like you gotta sift through all the junk.
And I would posit this question to the two of you. Would you prefer to get your information, let's call it information, not news, because it is just information,
it's just
whether
information,
it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Would you rather get it from a site that is censored or uncensored?
I'm glad that you asked this, because I was just about to talk about where I'm at with this, and you can't, like, it for me, there has to be a blend. You cannot choose either pole. I don't want my source coming from just one de facto person as like, I am the source of info, but I also don't want it coming from everybody, because when you say you have access to more information, but that information that I have access to isn't helping me make a better decision. A lot of it's just junk opinion. And it's like, so yeah, we have a place where you can junk opinion everything, but then now it makes it like, do we want a society where it is hard to trust anything you say or read or hear? Like, I don't know if that's actually a healthier society or a more destructive society where I cannot trust anything that I read,
Well, that's the interesting thing, though, is that this particular situation is interesting because the answer to that question that you just posed really depends on what information we're talking about, and not necessarily the way that it's communicated. Because if the information is good and it's communicated diffusely or through one person, really doesn't matter because it's good information. If it's bad, then it really doesn't matter because it's bad information. But the problem is that we're trying to decide how much control we want over it, because there's a mix of good and bad, and that's really the issue. And of course, I think it's like, yeah, you can't have open floodgates. But then again, like, there's already places for that. You know what I mean? Like, I think it'd be nice to have somewhere online where you can say whatever you want as long as you're not breaking the law. I'm not saying it has to be Twitter, but there's already a lot of people on.
What if you could have both of these things? Because I would design, if I was in charge, John, design public Twitter. Mm-hmm. You would be able, because everybody has to start. You can't just use the one you've been using. We all start over. Okay, step one.
Wipe the slate.
Okay,
clean, huh?
And I think we could allow anonymity. I think that's okay. I think you could do that. I mean, it's not like they're not digging through the metadata anyways. So we allow anonymity, okay? But here's the catch. When you make your profile, you get to decide what you see. Is it completely uncensored, unfiltered, every reply, every opinion, negative or positive? You get to craft it. Okay, I don't really need that. For me, I'm going to follow these people, and I only want to see replies that are like verified from like real users or something. I don't want to see anonymous stuff. Like, there is a way we could design that program to where you could have an uncensored, unfiltered Twitter experience that's just true free speech, but also other people could live in that exact same world where they're not interacting with that bullshit.
I was just going to say, I believe Jack Dorsey actually, when he started Twitter, had the intent that there would be two different Twitters. Like, there would be a Twitter, just like what you're talking about. There would be like a Wild West Twitter, and then there'd be the Twitter that we know today.
Funny to find out, Jack Dorsey isn't even the CEO of Twitter anymore. He's got another guy. He serves on the board still. But enter our boy Elon. Like, to me, I feel like he has to get a check in the hero box for this part of it, because think about this algorithm shit. Isn't that a little weird that you're not allowed to see what the parameters of that? Like, how you know that the information is being censored, right? But you have no idea how or why. Like, you don't know if are they leaning left with it? Is it a right leaning thing? Is it based on certain speech? Is it based on we have no idea. We just get what Twitter gives us, and we know that they're prioritizing certain information, and that's why he wants to open source it so that anybody who wants to can dig in there and find out exactly, and it stops maliciousness. It stops, like you said, somebody with a ghost hand. You don't know, like, are you banning Trump because he is just like a hate speech mongering, like breaking the rules and violate, or are you trying to push a left agenda? You know what I mean? You don't really know right now. But if we can see the algorithm and see what they're using as parameters, then that frees up a lot of this. So I was like, dang, that is a cool move that he's trying to go about doing that, where we do see how we're being censored.
I see the pole shift too from the liberal conservative kind of like flip flop thing, where it was like, obviously I don't have the memories of it before my time, but it used to be that the liberals were for free speech,
right?
And it was the conservatives who were like, no, Big Brother knows best.
Yeah,
and
can't have violent video games.
And now we've completely flipped to where the conservatives are like, they're censoring us more than everybody else, which not necessarily 100% true, but it's got enough truthiness in it to give everybody, a belief in it. And the liberals are like, yeah, deplatform them. Get them out of here.
Censor them more.
Yeah. It's a private company. They can do what they want.
But
I just want to say that I do agree with that on, like, just as a side.
It's very liberal.
Like, that's how I feel. Like, hey, look, if Twitter, like, if they're not, my tax dollars don't go to Twitter. I mean, they do, which is unfortunate, but not because of Twitter.
They're subsidized in the billions.
Right. But, like, it's, that's how I feel. Like, if you have a private library and, like, nobody's community money didn't go to pay for it, then you should be able to exclude whoever you want from reading your books.
Yeah.
But if even one public dollar went to that shit, then you got to open it up to everybody. Yeah. That's how I feel about it.
I hear that. But, we are still, again, like I said, we're operating under the guise that the liberals are trying to censor the Republic. Like, we don't even know that to be the case, And I think that's what
it's not, because plenty of people, Kyle Kalinske gets censored on Twitter all the time. But that's just because he's anti-establishment. He will... I think there's a smaller group of people on the left who will point out and expose politicians and people in power, the same people who people on the right would expose. I think that there's more people on the right and they do it a little bit more. And so it's like, that's maybe where some of the skew is coming from. But I think that, there's plenty of people on the left who are like, yo, the government's doing fuck shit. I don't agree with what Biden's doing right now. Like, there's plenty of people on the left doing that, saying those things.
What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I didn't know that. Is Babylon Bee satire? Was
yeah.
That like
it's like the
that was a satirical quote,
it's
right?
Onion thing. Yeah.
Because he has made he got sued by that guy during the Thailand cave trapping. There was a group of like a swimming boys team or something.
Oh, I remember this, and he was gonna send like a robot to save him or something.
Yeah, and the guy who was talking shit to him, this white dude, this like old British guy or something that was in Thailand, was talking shit to him, and Elon's like, he's probably a pedophile, and that guy sued Elon and was like, you can't call me a pedophile on Twitter, dude. That's messed up. But he didn't receive. I didn't see the finish end product on there, but it seemed like Elon dodged it. Is kind of where I got.
Can you really sue the richest man in the world?
That's what I was thinking when it was like when they kind of washed over it on his Wikipedia page. I was like, I'm sure nothing happened.
Yeah, I'm sure nothing happened.
Yeah, that man.
Or like I'm sure
that man died in a cave fall.
Something happened. He either got a lot of money or he got Clinton. One of those two.
Oh, good gracious! I did not know about this.
Oh, it's about to go down. I got something good for you guys. So this is. This is where Elon kind of enters, and he's like, okay, it might be getting a little out of control for me. So Twitter suspended the Babylon Bee account because they named this person, Dr. Rachel Levine, Man of the Year. And I think there was another publication at the same time that put her out as the Woman of the Year because she's transgender and whatnot. The Babylon Bee is satire. Like we said, they're a comedic leaning news site, whatever. And they're also right leaning in a sense too. So they took a jab at her. They took a jab at her. They called her the man of the year. And Twitter responded by being like, "You're banned." And Elon's like, "Wait, what? Like, how is that a thing? Like, why would you ban somebody for saying that? And I mean, I think that's very interesting because I don't see how that's bannable.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially a joke that somebody at Twitter didn't like, and they banned him.
Yeah,
But this is the other interesting thing is that it's, the decision to ban somebody, like with Trump or whatever, like Trump didn't even have anything to do with the algorithm. They were just like the board or whoever was like, we're going to ban him for the January 6th shit. But for this, like somebody has to make the decision that somebody's going to be banned. And that's another point that's hard to point down. Like, is it the algorithm or is the algorithm just flagging things and then the people that make the choice at the end being like, no, that one's good. Oh, but this right-leaning shit, no, that one's bad.
Right.
Like, you don't know how that's actually playing out, if it's playing out digitally, if somebody's making that decision. And so when they ban this person, like when they ban this page, that could have just been one person's thing. Whereas like the next person over in the next, group or team, that's the thing. Like you have to imagine that there's multiple people making decisions about who gets banned or not. Because that would just be ridiculous if one person did.
Well, then now also we got to get into terms of service. Because that's a real thing, terms of service.
Did they break the terms of service here?
That's what we're. That's
a good question.
They cited the hateful conduct. So I don't know what is in their terms of service that would deem that hateful conduct.
Jokes in bad taste. It seems like is hateful conduct.
Well, I would also say, and it's a little bit of devil's advocate here because I'm torn on this issue, so I don't really have solid footing, but protected class. I mean, if you had a black guy, or if you had a Jewish guy, or let's replace Rachel Levine with any other protected class, and you were like making a joke that could be deemed hateful by, let's call them the majority. Okay, because there's a lot of people like I won't even go that far. A joke in bad taste. Okay. We're allowed to joke. We joke all the time on this podcast.
Many times in bad taste.
Many times in bad taste. Many times in bad taste.
We got to admit to that.
The Babylon Bee holds some amount of power in the sense of like followers and platform.
Yeah, they got tons.
It goes back to the private company debate too, because Twitter's like, yo, you don't need to be doing that. And I could see where, like I said, if you start playing with the identities of the identity politics here and swap them around a little bit and say just as mean-spirited, jokey things, you could probably see where it might get taken down. Or it might be, that's hateful. You've crossed a line of good prudence or whatever.
Yeah.
And in this article, we had scrolled a little bit, and I saw like some quotes from the actual article that it got taken down. Or I'm sure the article didn't get taken down, but Twitter took the link down and suspended the account. But the quotes were a little mean-spirited, so it's like kind of mean.
Yeah, I mean, like they call him he and everything. Like they're like refusing to refer to the
pronouns.
Yeah, and like they're calling her by
what
her
a
old
boss.
name. They're dead naming her or whatever.
Yeah.
But I will say though, like aside from this particular instance, well, let's juxtapose this particular instance actually with another one. The head of the Taliban is on Twitter. The Ayatollah Khomeini is on Twitter.
Interesting.
I believe ISIS has multiple pages on Twitter.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, now, these are people that people on the left rail against very often. So, but this is interesting. So, like, how can you say that Twitter has a left-leaning bent when they're banning the Babylon Bee, but they're not banning the heads of these, what some people would consider terrorist organizations?
Are they breaking the terms of service?
But this is the other thing, though.
Because I don't know where I stand on this.
Did they, that's the point, though, is like, if I think that the argument is that they say that they're making these decisions based on the terms of service, but they're being selective about how the terms of service applies to individual things.
This is what they. Okay, Seth Dillon. He's retweeting or communicating what Twitter sent to him. I assume has been locked for specifically for violating our rules against hateful conduct. You may not promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. And that's, I mean, the explanation that they gave. So that leaves a lot of room for interpretation. I don't, because
I'm sure that they qualified this under the harass.
This is, I guess, the tweet that they're saying too, and
they didn't even at her.
They didn't.
So that can't even qualify as harassment. They didn't even at her.
I don't know how that's a promotion of violence against, though. That's one thing.
I think it's harassment.
Or harass. Okay, I see what they're saying.
Yeah,
because,
but if
like,
you say something about somebody and they're not there to hear it, that can't be classified as harassment. Harassment has to be done to the person.
I gotta agree with that.
Like if you go to the police and say, this man's been harassing me, but really he's been just bad-mouthing you to your coworkers, that's not harassment.
Well, but if he uses a printing press and puts it up all over town, which is the essential what you're doing with Twitter by putting that post out to 10 million people or something on your
But
followers.
there's already laws against it. She thought this was defamation.
I'm not arguing that it is or is not one thing or the other. My point is that if someone pointed to that tweet and said that's harassment, you could make a case for that.
So
if I was a
I'm
lawyer,
saying that that's
I
what
would-
they did.
My thing is,
I would make a case for
head
it.
of
I'm
ISIS
saying I disagree
tweets,
with that.
Head of ISIS tweets, man, I really don't like women.
They probably would have got banned from Twitter.
You know what I'm saying?
Or
But,
yeah,
like,
I'm sure
is
the
that-
head of ISIS has tweeted something like that.
You know, I just wonder why. Like, I don't. You know what I mean? It's so. And this is what Elon. Like I said, that's why I love that it doesn't seem like he's coming from this place of being like, man, fuck these guys. Like, I'm gonna do it. Like he said, he's like, well, let's just call a spade then. Y'all tell us what it is that, like, what's going on here.
What kind of jokes are we allowed to make?
like, what
Because
are y'all sensitized?
when it says serious disease, let's say you had somebody world famous. Let's call it Harrison Ford.
I was gonna, the Bruce Willis thing right now. He has aphasia or whatever.
Okay,
So
yeah, and I don't
he's
know
like,
what that is, but let's say it was that disease,
Cognitive decline.
some cognitive decline disease. If you put him out as the smartest man of the year, or like the healthiest man alive, guy dying from cancer, that's a fucked up, distasteful joke that I could see them being like, "Hey, we're gonna ban you for 2 months. Delete the tweet. You don't come back here and fuck with people who have diseases because that's against our code of conduct."
Yeah.
I could see that being fair. Literally the exact same thing is happening here. They said delete the tweet, stop attacking this trans person who's a very highly regarded public figure, and don't be a shithead.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I'm gonna be a shithead, and I'm gonna take you to court. Jesus, man, it's whatever.
No, this that you explain. That's why I brought the Bruce Willis thing. This is exactly what happened. There's a show called the Razzies where they give you like, you know, joking awards. So they gave him worst performance in an acting role award. But then it comes out later that he has aphasia, so he's like kind of been cognitively declining. And they're like, all right, well, our bad. We don't want to make fun of the mentally, you know, disabled guy, you know, whatever. So they retract the award that they gave him. But
That's ludicrous.
really, I mean, I dig it.
If he performed badly because he had the disease, I mean, does that change the performance? It's an award ceremony. They gave him an award for worst performance. They didn't necessarily say why he got the worst performance. I mean,
Well, it's just like it's like a roast, but you know, it's like, would you do a roast because somebody's mentally disabled?
they didn't do it because he was mentally disabled, though. That's the point. They didn't know.
No, it said the joke came out in response to the announcement.
Like, yeah, because he got the Razzie as the worst performance, and they were like, hey, you know, he's kind of suffering from aphasia right now, so it's like he retired and everything right after this. So they're like, oh, we didn't know that. Like, if your worst performance was because you're dealing with this like disease, then it's like, do you really want to razz somebody because they have a disease that's keeping them from performing well? You know, it's
no,
like,
I'm not
really. You don't really.
I'm not
want
saying
to.
I don't respect what they did. I'm just saying, like, you know, like the retraction. It's just like. That's the point, though. It's all in. It's like humorous.
Yeah, if people don't
Like,
get
if
the
they were
joke, like if
doing
you
it-
bomb on stage, like you don't have to go up there and apologize for your joke. But if you wrote it down and then you're highly criticized, you could be like, I denounce those writings.
I'll tell you now, if I'm clowning on somebody and I find out later that it's due to no fault of their own, I'm retracting my joke. You know, like I have like one of my personal morals is I don't make fun of people for things they can't control.
Immutable characteristics.
So yeah, so I might make fun of you for being fat because you cannot be fat.
You can,
but if I find out that you can't not be fat, then I don't want to make fun of you. That's why I often don't make fun of people for their height. You didn't get to pick your height. You know what I mean? That's not something that you choose to do. But if you're just like a dumbass, you're not educated, you make stupid decisions out here, then I'm a clown on you, you know, because you could have not done that and or you can correct that.
Well, let me ask you this. What if somebody's insecure about their height and you're making fun of that?
About their insecurity?
Not be insecure.
Yeah,
about
you
your
could.
height.
You could 100% do that, and I could see that. You know, like I said, it's at least within your control. But again, I'm not gonna make fun of you for your skin color. I'm not gonna make fun of you for being blind. You know what I mean? Like I just won't. You know, to me, it's just like you don't get to choose.
Old Jimmy can't see.
Hey,
stupid
yeah,
dumbass.
you know what I mean?
Y'all
Like,
know
it's
how
just
jokes are funny because they're
distasteful.
true.
Yeah.
Think about in high school, you probably had a friend who was mentally handicapped that you and your friends liked. Y'all mess with him.
Mm-hmm.
I had one at work and I had one at school. Like I remember guys with Down syndrome that I was super cool with. Now picture the weird guy. Nothing mentally handicapped wrong with him. He's just that weird kid that nobody likes.
Right. Yeah.
We don't mess with him.
Yeah.
But we mess with we usually because of that.
Yeah.
It's like you're choosing to be kind of weird, you know, like, you know, it's not like a mental deficiency for you to like really like something that we all decide is not cool or something. Right. But when you're mentally handicapped, it's like, yo, you're not like, you're yourself. And man, people in school, I'm like, is this hitting home? Like, did you guys have?
I have friends like that, but I never like. One thing that comes to mind was when I was in high school, I was in theater class. And dude, this is actually such a interesting story. My teacher teams me up with a kid, and he has this mental disability, autism or something. But he's smart, but he's not, you know, he's handicapped in a way.
He's
I guess.
hard to work with.
No, you know, but he just thinks differently. You know, like I don't like to call them handicapped because he's not. He just thinks differently. Because the dude is smart. He knew every single person's birthday in the class up and down. Could tell you the day you were born, everything. Like so, he's like Rain Man in a way. Like he has his own superpowers. But anyways, he's kind of autistic though. So she partners me up with this guy. I'm like, great, fine, I don't care. You know, I'll work with him. This will be great. Then they give us Of Mice and Men. That's the you know what I'm saying?
Wait, what role was he playing?
Who you think he is?
Wow.
She makes
I mean, who else could he play?
And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with this, dog. Like I was like, we gonna make him Lenny, and she's like, no, it's fine, it's great, you know, this that. And I'm just like, all right, you know. So I worked with the kid, and he was a great kid, and he smashed the role. I mean, like not to make like, but I would have never thought of like we were cool and everything, you know, but I would never just be like, you make a great Lenny, dog. Like, you were born for this role, my guy. You know,
yeah, like nobody makes fun of him.
Nah, we wouldn't really get on him.
Not about that characteristic.
Not about that characteristic, right? Like, just because, like I said, he didn't really choose to be that way. To me, I just think it's just distasteful. Anything.
Well, it's like a social. It's not that nobody makes fun of him. It's like a societal thing. So like society frowns upon when you make fun of the person who's mentally or physically handicapped, but they do not frown upon when you make fun of the person who's just like weird or people don't like them
socially awkward,
social awkward, whatever it is. Like like. They are not protected in the culture.
Yeah, right. That's true.
The way that someone who has a mental deficiency,
which
like,
some could say, like, you know, being socially awkward could be like a disability of sorts, you know.
I mean, it is a severe disability, but not in the term that we think of like a disability.
This leads you down to the path of you just don't make fun of people because it's mean, but that's kind of the point too, is like once you start being like, okay, well, I won't make fun of somebody for an unmutable characteristic.
Right.
Yeah, you're one step closer to being like, why am I making fun of people?
Yeah.
Because I used to bully the shit out of people. I've had multiple instances in my life where I was given power and I used that shit to grind people down to dust like an asshole. But I look back and I'm like, damn, dude, like even the weird kid. Why did I pick on the weird kid? Because he's different? Because he's the other? We got to make an enemy? Why do we need to have an enemy?
Yeah,
why can't we just be a team?
That's
so,
true.
you know, there's a good life lesson in there, but the same way that the Babylon Bee is kind of, it's like low-hanging fruit when you pick on somebody that like is a protected class in a kind of crass way. And Twitter, I you know, as a private entity, took their stand. If we pretend they don't have a stand, we'd be lying, but they definitely took a stand against what they consider to be harassment.
Yeah. Which is, I guess yes, true. Because like even a lot of people from the other side think of Elon as like the devil too. You know what I mean? Like he's
rich white man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I might celebrate him taking over Twitter because he's taking it in the direction that I would like to see it go.
Yeah. It's
but,
all preference.
Yeah, it is kind of because it's just like at the same time, like we were talking about, it's not. Twitter is going to go the way the owner wants it to go. Like whether, it's like you said, it's his library. So he could put whatever books he wants in that library. And so I'm like, oh, I like it because you're making the library the way I want it to be as compared to like somebody
what's
else's.
funny though, we can't say anything about whether or not like like you said, you like it because he's going to make it more in the way that you think it should be. So that makes sense. But it's interesting that Elon Musk hasn't said he's like, oh, we gonna flip the script on them. Now we gonna be banning liberals and shit. He's just saying like we want to do less banning.
Right.
And so
Free
it's
speech.
Interesting that the other side, the people, and I'm not even gonna classify the other side as being leftist, but just anybody who's against Elon Musk taking over Twitter, they are setting themselves up to be against the idea of more free speech, which is interesting. They're like, no, we don't want Musk to take over Twitter because we want restricted speech.
Right.
And it's like, that's a hard fucking position to take in America.
Yeah. And this isn't the first time Elon's held up.
You can dig your heels in, but that's deep, dog.
Yeah.
That's a deep
And this isn't the
foxhole.
first time that Elon's held the mirror up to the people of Twitter to look
Right.
at their own bigotry and hatred.
Right.
Because he's saying, I'm going to bring free speech, and people who are like, the liberals who are like, oh no, please, like are kind of exposing themselves the same way when he said, who do you think owns the media? And all the people came out and were like, that's anti-Semitic. He's a Nazi. And he was like, come on, guys. I'm talking about the rich billionaires in America that are,
I didn't say anything about
I didn't say anything about that. And they were like, yeah, but
we know who you're talking
in
about.
our heads.
It's like,
So it's
because
so that's your fault.
you're exposing yourself, dude.
Because I know when I was saying that too about I won't make fun of people like that, like it's just a personal preference though, right? Like it's just me, like that's just how I get down. I think of it as distasteful, but I think it should be allowed. Like one of the things he goes on, he's like, come on guys, y'all really gonna take down Dave Chappelle? Like it's Dave Chappelle, you know what I mean? Like what do y'all, like I love me some Dave Chappelle. Like there's a lot of things he says that I wouldn't say, or I wouldn't make that joke or whatever, but I definitely think you should be able to make that joke. You should
be able to make all the jokes,
any other
distasteful
jokes,
or not, and
like
if there's
whatever.
consequences
Because
to your
some
distasteful
people,
joke, there is.
Some people are more conscientious than others. Like for me, I care more about people's feelings, but I get that a lot of people don't give a fuck about your feelings, and that should be okay too. They shouldn't have to care about your feelings. You know what I mean? Like, so it's interesting. But you bring up a huge take to me. That's funny. I didn't think about it like that. With it, if you really are like, nah, fucking Elon, because he has not proposed anything that I see as like a negative outcome for Twitter, whereas like I do think we talked about it a little bit in the sense that I definitely think that a lot of the people who were into that hate shit are going to come back and they're going to get the opportunity to spread more of that hate that they want to. But I mean,
I don't see, like, I get the idea of the threat of the hate being spread through familial ways, like where like if a racist person raises a child, it's very likely that the child will grow up racist. That makes sense. I don't see how, like, if a racist comes out to the public and is like racist shit propaganda stuff, like who's that really affecting? Like,
if you don't fuck
like
with
you got to be on the edge about black people already for a racist to be able to pull you over to the other side. So like you were already like, man, I've been having a lot of negative experiences with black people recently, which is unfortunate because that does happen to people.
You're making a really good point there, because I like uncensored news. If there's a mass shooting, I will go to the racist places to find all the newest information out because they're uncensored.
Right.
That's literally the only reason why. And it's like, does exposure to an uncensored environment, like, is that going to push me over the edge and make me hate black people or Jewish people or something? Like, that's ridiculous to me because I'm not on the edge. But if I was one of these people who, malleable mind, like maybe my prefrontal cortex isn't fully formed. Maybe I have, lived in a part of the city where I interacted mostly with like African Americans and had bad experiences. Now I'm on the edge. You're right. That could take somebody down there. I feel like secure enough to go get my news there. But if that was the de facto, if Twitter was like that,
I'll challenge it a little bit. You know how black people say, or just people of color, minorities in general, when they talk about like there's not enough representation of them in places of power to encourage other young people coming up to be like that, you know? I can see where it's like where we try to push some of these things to the recesses of our environment because we don't want to champion them as acceptable viewpoints. And like, so my thing is, if you allow more people to spread racism or hate speech as like, and that's just okay, that's allowed to happen, it will kind of encourage some of that, more of that, because other people will feel emboldened to do said thing, right? It's kind of like back in the day where it's like masks, you know? You might not want to be the only guy in a room not wearing a mask, but if there's like 5 other dudes, you feel more solidarity in a sense of like, yeah, we could do this. Like, there's other of us out here that think this, you know? And you feel more comfortable being that way. I think that when we push the racism out into the recesses and make it seem like nobody out here does that, you feel more outcasted and feel more like I should keep this to myself, right? Whereas if you do feel like there's a strong support system out there for you, you might be more inclined to go all in on that.
Yeah, there's a lot less racists who show their face.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you want them to remain hidden?
No, he's saying that's a consequence of pushing those ideas as far out of the social contract as possible, is that they will hide their face because if they are exposed, then there's going to be more consequences.
It makes it less mainstream.
Yeah, but I mean, but it sounded like you were trying to make the point that that was like a bad outcome, that they would now be exposed.
I like that. No, I like them being in the recesses. Like, I like for their ideas to not be able to become mainstream ideas.
But that's the way an idea becomes mainstream is not through people talking about it. If everybody's talking about it, it's already mainstream. People have to adopt it to then. So just talking about racism isn't making it more mainstream, because maybe you're making the idea that we all dislike racism mainstream. So how is that beneficial for racism?
No, okay, so if I'm allowed to gather on Twitter and create Twitter's not a good example, but a Facebook group, and I can now cultivate, because for me, y'all, we take it to the racism, for me, it's the pedophilia, right?
That's
like,
true, too,
You know, I don't...
These fucked up ideas. Yeah.
Right, like you have pedophilic tendencies for whatever reason, right? But you know it's bad. You know it's wrong. So you don't act on these pedophilic tendencies, right? But now what if you end up in a group where everybody's like, pedophilia, baby?
We
Look how
fuck
fun
with
it
it
is.
the long
I'm out here
way.
doing it.
Yeah.
He's out here doing it. We're all doing it. Like, and
Here's
then,
all the resources.
like, right, here's where you find the
exactly
info. Here's how you do this. You know, and then now that person, I think, becomes more comfortable with that being like a more main, like they like it's cool. Other people are doing it, and I think that it creates social proof for bad ideas.
Ease
and
of
I
access.
don't like
We're talking ease of access.
Yeah, I don't
too.
like social proof.
I
And
can
social
see that. I think
validity for bad ideas.
I think that's a hard analogy to make, because pedophilia is an activity that's illegal, and like trafficking and pedophilic images is illegal. Like, all of those things are already illegal. Whereas like having a racist opinion isn't illegal, because it's not really affecting anybody. Like, to do anything involved in pedophilia, somebody had to have been abused at some point in time, which is why it's illegal.
Racist tendencies lead to discrimination.
Right, but I don't think that discrimination is like something that's
Definitely
illegal.
affecting people, though.
Like, or it shouldn't be illegal.
But
Like,
there's
everybody discriminates, so we're just
Yeah.
talking about which discrimination is allowed.
But there's a
which I don't think
correlation
is
between
fair.
allowing that discrimination and allowing that hatred to be part of the social contract and things like lynchings or attacks. Like, those numbers would increase if you had the resources of, I could get on any of these millions of racist Facebook groups and have, you know what I mean? Like, people to, like-minded people to bounce ideas off of.
But you guys know that there are racist Facebook groups, right? Like,
Yes.
it's not like they're not on.
Yeah,
there.
but it's
I
not.
agree.
It's not like North Carolina lynching boys,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's.
No, I feel you, but I mean, but this is my point though, is that I don't see how that is, because you're talking about something that would then have to affect the opinion of that thing to the general populace, which is still negative. So even if it's exposed, everybody looks at it negatively, or at least the majority of people look at it negatively. So I don't see how that could be seen as like something that's going to boost, you know, like, you're right. Maybe you have a few people that are like a little bit more open, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm like, good. I want to know who's got pedophilic tendencies around. That seems like good information to me. I'd like to have that information. I'd like to have it about racists too. If you're more willing to be like, yo, I'm not really fucking with Indian people, I'm like, cool, check. Don't fuck with Mark, because he doesn't fuck with Indian people.
That's
You know
your
what I mean?
proclivity, but what if other people, like you said, they didn't hate Indian people or whoever we're going to use as an example. They didn't hate them, but they've had a couple of brush-ins with Indian people that they weren't really proud of. They didn't happy that. And they come across the same group of people and they agree with that sentiment. And you can see how they get drawn into that. I just see that happen often. And like you said, I like that I think that these things should be able to exist, right? My thing is, I like that we have certain fail safes in place to stop them from being able to spread themselves as mainstream ideas. That's all I'm saying. Like for right now, if you want to be racist or if you want to be if you want to enact in these ideas, you have to seek it. You have to go looking for it. It is not readily available.
It is not on the surface.
Like your algorithm isn't, suggesting to you, hateful groups and things to like join ISIS. Like that's the last thing I want on my newsfeed is an advertisement coming up to join ISIS.
Well, this is why I don't think that the idea of having these algorithms, like you're speaking to that's a symptom of a problem, which is that you have a platform which has an algorithm to try to expose you to things that you otherwise don't already know about, which in some cases is cool, but in some cases it can be bad. And so it's like, I'd rather it just be like you said, you have to seek it. Like I only see things on my social medias that I look for because I don't go to the explore pages and I don't let them suggest things to me because I don't need your suggestions. Like if I'll find out about it through my ways of finding out about it, which are like good for me because I don't get exposed to a lot of fuck shit that way. But I think that I don't like the idea of constricting some people's access to stuff because it could be dangerous to other people, because that could be taken down a number of different avenues, and we could have a whole slippery slope conversation about why restricting access to certain things, like let's say narcotic substances, could be detrimental to some people, but it could also be beneficial to some people. And so I always err on the side of more access and education. Like that's where I think that we could see the best benefits, because you'd still have those ideas repressed, because the town square, I don't see a situation where Twitter would be like, even if they allow racist people to say racist shit on Twitter, where that would get like in the algorithm and like be promoted on like their explore, like check out the Twitter explore page. Here's like the head of the KKK doing like one of their seances or whatever.
But
well, if it was socially acceptable, and this is
Elon Musk would if he bought it.
Right, exactly.
Well, this is the symbiosis between the corporations and the people who use these corporate entities for their, like, let's call it social media. Okay, so these social media corporations and the audience, it's symbiotic, because if we all are on Twitter and Twitter promotes the KKK, there's going to be a large number of people who are like, I'll use a different service. I don't want to be part of this service that's promoting the KKK. So it would essentially like disrupt the company in a large way, financially and economic, like in every way possible. It would be terrible for them. Bad look.
Right.
Be a real bad look. So Twitter and all the other social media companies, by de facto, the audience, us, decide what is acceptable. And we decide what we want to be able to see on these social medias. We've decided we don't want to see, and this is the audience, not me or you, because you have your own preferences, anti-trans, anti-black, anything that is deemed distasteful in that sense of hateful. We as the audience has decided that's bad. So it's not necessarily... What?
And gross. Like, you don't see somebody getting their head smashed open with a mallet.
We've decided what is pornography and what is not, or what is obscene and what is not, as the audience, as a collective. So when it's like, yo, Babylon Bee gets suspended from Twitter for saying this really distasteful, could be argued that's harassment or hatred, it makes perfect sense to me, because the audience has kind of decided they don't want that.
Right.
So it's not necessarily like I think that Twitter shouldn't be allowed to do that. I think it's just like, it's kind of by de facto, it's the audience. And if Twitter becomes so powerful that it's the only option and people can't leave it, well, then it becomes like oppressive. Well, maybe then we start looking at it like, yo, this is a totalitarian, like controlling our speech and our think patterns. But currently it seems like we're in some level of control on what we want to see and what we don't.
Well, of course, yeah, it's a money-making thing, and it gets money based on the amount of time people spend on the app to see advertisements. So if people spend less time on it, they make less money. And you're right. I'd imagine the same thing, that if they started promoting a lot of racist and pedophilia adjacent opinions and promote, like, accounts and stuff, other people would be like, yo,
police
I just can't get away from this stuff, so I'm gonna have to put Twitter down or whatever.
police,
I mean, like, you know, that's where I think that we have the most. That's why I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, oh, you know, like, good for Elon Musk. He's trying to like do his thing, which respect, you know, like, good for him. But I'm much more the sense like the problem with a lot of the alternatives is that they end up becoming safe havens for those people, and then they get you know, like now that's like where you go. Like Rumble is where the racist people post their videos because they can't post them on YouTube, and that's kind of like known. And like some people post their videos on Rumble as like a stand of solidarity with the concept of free speech.
Same with
but they still upload their videos to YouTube as well. Mm-hmm. You know, and so it's like anybody who hasn't been banned from YouTube and uses Rumble willingly is trying to say like I stand with the idea of what Rumble's trying to do, but they'll never be able to gain the amount of following and numbers of users that like a YouTube has, because it's just it's oversaturated with all of this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we're having this weird dilemma where like if we never accept that some of these people have some of these really fucked up ideas and we just keep leaving them in the corner, maybe they don't grow in size, but now we've just like there's a corner of our world that we're not allowed to go to just because like these people are in there, and we're not willing to engage with them in any way. Like, what if that guy, that musician dude who goes and he's gotten like over 200 KKK members to like give him their robes and give up the KKK. He could have never done that if he was like, I'm censoring these guys' speech because it's hateful. Like you have to go and have conversations with these people and engage with their ideas for them to see that it's not bad. No, let alone the people they might convince along the way.
I would argue that Twitter is not the place to do that, though.
No, of course not. So, well, I mean, that's another argument about where's best to have communication. But I mean, like, so then
I just personally
opens
I have
up a whole
not
nother
seen
can
a
of
comment
words.
section work well in persuading people to take on different viewpoints. I've just never seen that. So, I mean, to say that we need to invite them over to Twitter so that we can converse against their ideas, I don't. From a psychological standpoint, I think all that does is galvanize you more into your ideas. When they come over there and everybody goes and hates against them, then it just creates the y'all are dummies and we know what we're talking about, and it's like just a Twitter war then, which is like
that's all it is now.
When I like the idea you said about them being contained, because as much as I would love to eradicate hate, I don't think that's possible. Was it evaporate?
Evaporate hate.
As much as I would like to evaporate hate, I don't think it's completely possible. It just becomes steam, and then it rains again, and there's more hate. So if they're in their own little corner of the internet where racists go to upload their videos, kind of more okay with that than those videos being promoted on YouTube or being presented to the masses on the more...
To my 14-year-old child, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want
strolling TikTok, and it's like, oh, here's the KKK talk. I fell into racist talk. Like, I don't want that, because I can pull up TikTok and get sucked in, and all of a sudden I'm like, what'd you say, your mom? Like, I'm sucked into a hate talk or whatever. Like, it can happen. It can happen very easily. So if I'm 14 years old and I have a malleable, neutral state of understanding of things, and it can craft me. You know, it's crafting a 36-year-old man. I want to go like learn how to fill paint in a bucket and swing it around and shit.
Because that's why I got it. That's why I say, like, for me, like, I don't give a fuck who it is, because I do have some reservations with Elon Musk. I think we have to talk about it in a different episode probably, where we, you know, do a deeper dive on him and stuff and talk a little bit about some of the other things he's doing. So it's like, I don't necessarily feel like I got the most trust for Elon Musk. I don't know yet. I just don't know yet with him. You know, it's kind of like anybody. You don't know these people personally, so it's hard for me to gauge exactly what his motives and intentions are out here. But I could not, like, when he said open source that algorithm, I just could not. I couldn't think of somebody should run on a presidential platform of open sourcing fucking algorithms.
Andrew Wang was kind of there.
You know what? I just, because that's my thing.
Open source the money.
I'm with the censorship. I'm okay with it. You know, like we keep going back and forth about this. Like, I think it's just a little bit of law and a little bit of order. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be a balance. That's what the conversation always is. What is acceptable levels of pornography and too much pornography. What's, too obscene and not obscene. And there is a balance. We all agree on that. It's just we're always fighting about where is the balance. Babylon shouldn't be able to say man of the year, or is it they shouldn't be able to go and kick this man in the nuts, or woman, excuse me.
And there's a million of these arguments
exactly.
There's a million of these arguments all the way from age of consent laws to hate speech laws.
That's the conversation. So I'm cool with the censorship, but what I don't like is the hidden veil of censorship. We're censoring things, but you don't know what, and you don't know when. And like you said, with my TikTok, if I like a post, is that shaping my algorithm more, or commenting?
Staring at it.
What if I accidentally like a post? Is there any, do I have to like so many certain posts to create that as and then what are they, how are they categorizing these things? Sports, women, men.
It goes deeper.
You like muscly guys. Oh, you like big asses. All right, we got the big ass. We noticed that you like 3 videos that are columnized in the big ass category. So now we're gonna give you +5 points in big ass algorithm.
It goes even so much deeper than that, because they're data brokering all your information, so they can just buy all of the stuff from your phone, all the apps that are telling it how old you are, where you go every day, how often you do that thing, how much you pull up this thing. All that's for sale. So they're all just feeding that back to you on TikTok. So what TikTok is doing is it doesn't just know you like the booty. It doesn't just know that you like this post. It knows what you ate for dinner. It knows where you're sitting in your house. It knows what kind of car you drive. It knows your insurance payment history. Damn. So it is feeding that. That's why it gets scary to me, because I'll be like, I've had it happen to me, or I'm just looking at vertical videos on my phone, and then my phone dies. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, how long have I been here?
That's not good.
Yeah. But I think we should, more transparency in that aspect. So he's proposing that with Twitter, and like I said, the things that he's proposing, the change and stuff is interesting, and it does seem to be for the better health of that platform. But at the same time, I mean, I could say a lot about, damn, do we want the same guy to own space, own transportation, and own communication?
So asking for a Lex Luthor.
You're just begging for it. You're just begging for a one world, order, or an antichrist,
almost like a new world
superior,
he even wants to chip us.
I don't even you know what I mean? I don't even like China owning as much as they do of our shit. So I definitely don't like just one dude being yeah, I control all of this shit, and there ain't a motherfucking thing you can do about it,
Well, that's the funny thing, is that there is something we can do about it. It's actually something that we have to stop doing, which is giving this man all of our money. That's how.
Hey, man, if he stops creating all this good technology.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that's the problem. Is
I could see somebody making the argument that dictators come along by providing everybody with cool shit along the way. And so they veil themselves in sheep's clothing, you know what I mean? Oh yeah, I'm making these badass electric cars, and I'm, revolutionizing energy and space travel, and then, I'm gonna fix social media, and then he gets all of these things, he solidifies his power, and then he could become Elon Musk, dictator of the United States.
He saves. Then he rapes. We always say he rapes, but he saves first. You know what I mean?
I see the red flag here. Whenever it's it's going to get to a certain point, he's going to be like, oh, yeah, I made Tesla clothes. Everybody wear my uniform. Yeah. We're going to meet up at the Tesla march. Yeah. We're going to march over to the border.
I'll do you one even better, though. Here's the interesting thing. Maybe. What if Elon is just the most altruistic, he is the hero of men? Who comes next, though?
Right.
Elon's got to die. You know what I mean? He's got to die just like every human's got to die. And then he has to pass on all of that consolidated power and wealth and all that to some other
people
human that
Sure.
he has just as much faith in that we all do, because that's what we've noticed the time and time again. It's usually not the person who creates that empire. They tend to be good, but somebody else comes along and they don't have as altruistic intentions as the person who started the thing did. Now they come from the board of directors or something.
Right.
where
First
it was
comes
more-
Lenin, then comes Stalin.
Exactly the point. So it's
Right.
just like that worries me in the sense too. Like you said, he could be the greatest guy ever, but this consolidation of all these different I've been saying the same thing with Jeff Bezos. You know, I don't like the fact that he's buying up everything under the sun. You know, to me, I'm like, I feel like you should be, not only should you not be able to monopolize an industry, but you also shouldn't be able to own majority of multiple industries too, you know, just because then you become, ipso facto. Dude, like kind of what he's doing to Twitter now, he could start doing to the entire United States if he wanted to, which
every industry he wants.
Right, which is, he doesn't even really have to buy Twitter. He just needs to make them think like, hey, if you don't start playing the game the way I want you to play it, I will buy you. And then now you're like,
and I'll fire all of you. And
yeah,
you'll lose
exactly,
your jobs.
right. So it's
just
like
do
now
what I
you
say.
start thinking like, he just starts ratcheting up the pressure. I got 11% now. Hey, I got 15%.
Hey, he's Jeff Bezos with Washington Post,
Y'all
right?
better, you know what I mean? Exactly. And then if y'all don't, then I will just buy you out, and then I'll do it myself. Or you do it. You do all these things that I've already proposed out openly that I think would be good ideas. And if you do, then I just, and he could just do that. He's like, I could just turn these Teslas off if I wanted to. How will everybody get to work?
Yeah, hence why I won't buy.
All right, well, maybe you should
Tesla.
vote for this person I said you should vote for.
This is also one of the reasons why I'm like not so heavy on like the Bitcoin thing, because everybody just like believes that they understand this brand new thing that somebody else who's anonymous invented. They're like, we got a total firm grasp on what this is and how it works, and he can't come back and fuck us, even though we don't know who he is or why he made this thing.
And he
it's
still
like,
owns like 70
and it's like,
fucking million of them
okay, sure, I believe you think that for sure. But I will say that it's really interesting to see, the concept of decentralization is usually found more predominantly with people who lean politically right. But it's also very prevalent among people who lean politically left when it comes to corporations. You know, they don't like the centralization that's coming because, I mean, pretty much anybody can look at a centralization of power and say, that's not going to end well. Because it doesn't. It never does. A centralization of power never works
Power
well.
corrupts people.
Whether it's a centralization of government power or corporate power. Like, it's just, you don't want a small amount of people making decisions that affect everybody else. Because how often do you really fuck with the people who are making those small those small amount of decisions?
You're describing the Supreme Court. No, it's funny. Right. I kind of go, I feel you.
I mean, like, that's why the Supreme Court is such a contentious thing, because
it's flawed.
It's very important that you get somebody in there that thinks like you do so that they can make the decisions for you that you want them to make, even though you could easily just make those decisions yourself.
And consensus, like the smaller the sample size, the more likely you are to get shit wrong. You know, like the only reason we know the color green is because so many of us have come together and agreed upon that is green. We even talked about like we said, like with Twitter or something, like we get that you police us up, but really it's not you, it's the audience. You said it earlier, like we'll come together. If you start doing some shit that we don't fuck with, then we'll stop using your platform and then you won't have anything. It's a relation.
Yeah, some people on the right thought that was going to happen. Like, enough people will leave these platforms and then... and I'm like, you think more people care than really do.
No, but they still very might. It's the same thing with like mask policy. Like you just got to ratchet up the intensity enough to start mass exodus. It's kind of like inflation or something. It's like it might take a long time for it to hit that tipping point, but once it does,
it tips.
It'll fucking all start scaling over. So there could still be a mass exodus of those things.
Well, it depends on what
when
actions they take.
Yeah.
When people left MySpace, nobody got together and was like, we're all going to go to Facebook.
No, that never happened.
It just happened.
Just all of a sudden, it just starts spilling. So it's like, they could always make that wrong step and it could happen. But my point is, open, like you said, decentralization, bringing as many minds as is feasible or efficient together to make decisions, I think is always the best bet. or maybe not always, but tends to be the best bet. Whereas I know that a lot of people of power would disagree with that sentiment, but
they're scared to show us the algorithm for a reason.
yeah, right, 100%, because they know that we're not gonna like what we see. It's kind of like Pfizer; they didn't want to put out them papers for another decade because they know we weren't gonna like what we saw. You know?
The funniest part about that is like, okay, Elon Musk is gonna open source the algorithm. I'll just speak for the three of us here in this room, and I think I can do that on this particular issue. None of us would know what the fuck
I'm
it
not looking
said
at that
anyways.
shit.
No,
I
I
wouldn't
do.
even waste my time looking
Nope.
at it.
Nope.
Wouldn't
Nope.
even care.
Don't even care.
I would have to wait until somebody else said that they knew what it was about and told me what was going on in it, and then I'd be like, that sounds right. But of course, I'm going to lean to the person who's being like, they're censoring libertarian-minded people who like to pirate content online, and I'm like, that's right, I knew it. You know what I mean? Like that's how I'm just gonna.
But again,
that's how I'm gonna
consensus.
go.
I don't want just one other person to see the algorithm. Like I want many people to see it and many people to come up
Yeah,
with.
you described how I get about 92-ish% of all my information is
Right.
through someone who understands it much, much more than me, breaking it down for my lizard brain.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
for
no,
sure.
I'm not saying that that's not.
And someone you like though. That's
Yes,
the other
and,
thing.
and by
Yeah.
general consensus,
Yes.
everybody else likes them too.
Right.
And we have all agreed as the audience,
Right.
he's the guy.
Right. And so it's interesting, like I mentioned, it's funny how like even on the internet with the anonymity and everything, just mentioning a certain person can endear you to another person just because of like a cult of personality thing.
Yeah, quote Big Lebowski.
You
you'll
quote
meet
the
some
Big
quick friends.
Lebowski, yeah. Like I was thinking more political, but that's true. Like referencing things is like the quickest way to establish camaraderie with people. Like, oh, you fuck with this anime, I fuck with that anime. We should be friends.
Yep.
Or like it's just like that child shit. But that's how you still are. You're just like that.
That's why we make them wear uniforms in the cult.
Yep. Just to know whose team you're on.
Yeah. If you wear a uniform, you got something in common. So it's like you could be sitting across from somebody who doesn't even speak your language. Be like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in
Exactly.
the same group.
Dude, that's how. Anytime we travel and I see somebody in a Chelsea jersey,
Right.
what up? I
Yeah,
don't
oh,
ever
yeah.
what up anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
But if you got a Chelsea jersey on, I'm locking eye contact and I'm initiating a small what's up conversation with you, even though I hate it when people do that to me for no reason.
yeah. I always get it from the weird. I wear different, not just clubs but countries.
Yeah.
So I'll get somebody to be like Uruguay, and I'll be like, yeah,
I'm really American, but yeah.
yeah, Uruguay.
Hell yeah. I got their shirt on.
Yeah, I've done that with Portugal, Uruguay, a couple of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You should just turn around and be like Ronaldo.
Yeah,
not quite.
Well, that's what I did with the Uruguay one.
Yeah.
I was like Cavani. I was like, because if you're from Uruguay,
You
who Edison
immediately be
Cavani
like,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Come on.
Interesting how we pick our allegiances. That's a whole conversation for another day.
I go by
about
colors
my team.
and favorite player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I look stylish wearing these
Yes.
colors?
Yeah, I don't really have one, but I definitely look for that. Like I keep telling you, I'm like, you got to meet this dude. He's a super Chelsea fan, man. So you guys will be friends.
And it's funny because this is funny.
Fuck that guy. No, I'm just
But that's what's funny though is that like
fucking know that dude.
I'm usually the kind of like if somebody if a girl was like, oh, you should meet my boyfriend, you guys would really hit it off. I'm like, I'm not gonna hit it off with that guy, and I'm not gonna meet him either. Like, there's no chance in hell I'm doing that. But you tell me that, oh, you should meet this guy. He's a Chelsea fan. If you had just said you should meet this guy that I'm working with, I'd have absolutely no desire to meet that guy. I'd be like, oh. And I wouldn't like seek to meet the guy. I would be like somewhat excited or open to meet the guy. I might do it as just like a nicety to you.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely interested in meeting this person just because you say he's like a fan of the same team with the same crest as me.
Yeah. It's so wild.
I know nothing about
Yep.
this person
It's
other
so
than that he likes the team with the same crest, and I'm like, I think I might like this man.
Yeah.
I could think of dozens of things you could say to me, like, "Oh yeah, he likes Gundams," and I'd be like, "Oh fuck, I gotta meet this guy."
I gotta meet this guy.
Or if you were like, "He's read every Stephen King book," I'd be like, "I might actually want to meet this man."
But this is so true though, because even like we were talking about when somebody goes like, I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day, and you're like, this man listens to Joe Rogan. Like all of a sudden it adds to your profile
That's
of
true.
this person. You're like, oh, he might be a little right leaning for me, or like something, whatever. Like you start making all these assumptions based on, like we were having this conversation the other day, kind of involving Elon, but somebody was just like, yeah, I would love to sit in a room with Jeff Bezos and all this stuff. And I'm like, out of all the people you could talk to, of all the minds, you want to talk to Jeff Bezos? And I was just like, I don't know about you, man. I just slid across the room a little bit on him, you know? And I'm like, why? Because again, the profile just doesn't add up to me. I'm like, of all the smart minds and of all the intelligent people that you could get together, like, why Jeff Bezos?
Probably because he's the second richest person in the world,
right?
And he's like the most famous businessman.
What do you feel like you would? I mean, I guess
I'm sure that person feels like if they were able to sit in a room with them. I'm not saying that this would happen, but I'm sure that person feels like if they were like, hey, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to sit in a room with anybody you want, and he's a career-oriented person. I don't see how him being like, or this person, I don't know if it's a he or she. I don't see how this person being like, I want to sit in a room with Jeff Bezos as being like, ooh, it's
because exactly what you just said. That means that they're probably a career-oriented person, which I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, to me, it means that you want to know how to make billions of dollars. Because that's the only thing I could think that I would learn from Jeff Bezos. Not, I mean, obviously we're stereotyping him. He's a
there's
human,
plenty of things to learn. Yeah.
He's probably very intelligent, has many things to say, but as his characteristic and stuff, you know, it's like same thing when they said like Elon. Elon is fascinating to me, but I wouldn't want to sit in a room and get to know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't, what he would try and teach me, I'm not so sure I'm open to, like, or interested in learning about, you know?
Yeah.
I would like to know some of his views of the future, like why he takes on this mission of, like, saving the world, you know, and, like, what he deems he's saving it from would be interesting to me. But anyway, for me, mine was Tony Robbins, you know, which would say a lot about who I am as a person too. So it is interesting to see, like you were saying, based on different personality types, how you will also categorize people and stuff. We could talk about this with social platforms. Like, you know, when people tell me I don't really use YouTube that much, I judge you a little bit, you know. I'm like,
how do you learn everything?
How like, so you don't be learning then?
Yeah, I just assume that they don't learn is what I assume.
Well, a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
A lot of people, you can, like, if you just took if everybody's screen time was displayed, right, for the world to see. I'm just saying.
This is a great idea.
How many people would it just be like Euphoria season 2 and
2 through 7?
Yeah, and
Last
like, you know what
night.
I'm saying? Yeah, well, 100%. And it's just like, that's their screen time is just like music and movies or, you know, something like that. Where other people, it's like programs or it's learning and, you know, whatever it is, reading even. Like my screen time lately has been the classic book Dune. I'm just reading it. It's my screen time. Like and let me tell you,
Hours.
the reduction of blue light exposure before sleep, I'm shedding weight like nobody's business. There are studies that show that if you go to bed with a TV on, you will be 10 pounds heavier.
Oh, wow.
It's a very strong correlation.
Wow.
Yes.
Did
So
not know
This
that.
is why, let me just say, this is the phenomena that John just described is exactly why people came to the conclusion that eating an all vegetable diet was healthier for you, because when they did the epidemiology studies, they just sampled people who eat meat and people who eat vegetables. But at that time, in the early 2000s, I think, or maybe even earlier than that, well, when a lot of the studies were done, but at that time, people who only ate vegetables did a host of other things that were also very healthy, like activities and not eating junk food and other things. Whereas the people who ate meat, they didn't classify like healthy people eating meat, like grass-fed beef or whatever. Like you were eating like barbecue and McDonald's and stuff, and like those people also tended to like not work out and not do a lot of other healthy things.
And you're saying the same thing with the blue light thing.
Exactly.
Like,
So like it's a correlation. Like it, you know, obviously it's not like blue light makes you fatter. Right. It's just that if you are focused on reducing the amount of blue light that you have, it tends that you're also like more interested in nutrition and more interested in exercise.
It's the same way.
Health and wellness.
That's the same exact correlation between like being rich and working out every day.
Yeah.
You know, like all these things, like it may not lead, like if you squat 25 times a day, it's not going to
Doesn't
put
mean you're-
money
doesn't
in
make
your
you
pocket.
money, but
But you're going to correlate along a
you'll be
path.
in a category with a lot
Correct.
of people who happen to have a lot
Yes.
of money.
Yeah.
So I look at that's like, I just keep looking at all those different things in my life and I'm like, okay, the people who drink soda,
Yep.
okay, are not what I want. Like, I don't want to correlate in the direction of the soda drinker.
Right.
And it's not even that soda drinking is such a bad thing.
No,
You could healthily drink sodas.
You can't. You could healthily ingest blue light.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like it's just, but the correlation, you know, like that's a real thing, and it's I would just say, if you don't believe me, try it.
Yeah, facts.
Also, there's a strong correlation between dairy drinking and car crashes, so be on the lookout for that.
Yeah. Get the creamer out of your coffee, or you're gonna die on the road like
Smash
a
your car.
piece of roadkill.
It's interesting. There are more car crashes for dairy drinkers. I don't really get that.
When dairy
It's the
consumption
gas.
goes up, car crashes go up.
Yeah.
They have nothing to do with each other. It's just, that's just two things that happen to go up and down similarly.
It's like carpet cleaning. Like if you keep your carpet clean, you're like 10% less likely to kill yourself. I'll just make it up.
you just made that up. I know.
But you can make up anything. Like you can really
I guess this is where our thought process goes. Like me judging the person who doesn't watch YouTube goes astray. Where it's like not all things correlate. Like they're on BitChute.
Right, yeah, like
they're not learning. They're just
you find out in a very
learning
quick,
in a very racist
like right
way.
after you meet them, you're like, you use a lot of YouTube, and they're like, I don't use a lot of YouTube, and you make a judgment call, but you don't have enough time to like learn more about them, and as soon as you leave from wherever you just met this person, they just pull out like an encyclopedia, just start reading it. They're just like the most well-informed person.
College textbook.
He could like fix a car while reading this book at the same time, and you're just like, that dude doesn't learn.
He's finishing his Mensa application.
Yeah, it's like writing a book by hand with like a feather pen, and you're just like, that dude doesn't learn. He doesn't watch YouTube.
That's so true. And then I'm over here just like watching cat videos on YouTube. Being like, this man doesn't
I'm learning.
learn.
I learn on YouTube all the time. I don't ever do anything
I
entertaining.
learned a
Steph
lot
Curry
from
for
the
3.
Batman trilogy.
Especially when I heard some other guy break it down philosophically.
Those 3 hours I watched where that guy picked apart Captain Marvel frame by frame, I learned a lot. Big learn.
Oh god, it's so funny. Well,
Hey, Elon Musk, baby.
dude, we gotta sit down. We were gonna do a deeper dive on Elon. We got caught up on the old free speech.
speech.
Man.
Free speech,
That's
man.
a
We all
interesting
believe
conversation.
we believe very strongly in free speech in our own ways.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
hard. Like when somebody starts talking about free speech, it's hard to not be like, I could talk about free speech.
It's like
forever.
saying religion or
Yeah.
spirituality.
Yeah. Like I could really get in there because there's a lot to discuss. Like I said,
Yeah.
we are trying to find that line.
It's one of my gods.
It's
freedom.
free freedom. Yeah, and I feel you on
good one.
100%. Freedom is top notch for me. Everything I do in my life is geared towards maximizing freedom. That's 100% the truth, actually. But in line with that, I gotta say I'm really interested in this little tussle going on between Elon and Twitter. I think you brought up a really good point earlier where it's like I think it was you, but like I'm not more inclined to use Twitter because I'm just not a Twitter
with
guy,
Twitter, yeah.
But I like that the people who are over there on Twitter are gonna get a little bit more freedom to say what they need to say.
Yeah. Come find us on Twitter at TAID3I.
Yeah,
TAID3I. It's right there.
You go.
It's right there. It's also in the description.
Mhm.
You don't even
Come
have to
find
type
us.
it.
Yeah. Come tell us what you have to say. It's free. Say whatever you want to.
Yeah.
We're open
Until
to it.
Elon buys it.
Yeah, you might
Then we don't
start
know.
charging you. That's interesting.
But stay tuned for more of our conversation about whether or not Elon is an actual superhero or supervillain. That one's gonna come soon, and tons of more dangerous ideas that we have in the pipeline for you guys. So
We love it.
yeah, we'll see you again next time, man.
Yep.
Peace.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like